Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And of course, this month is Women's History Month. Of course, I'm having all Black women come on my show because that's what I want to do, and it's my show, and I'm going to rock it how I want to rock it. And of course, on this episode, I have from ESPN, Miss Maya Jones. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Now, I've read your work, and you definitely do excellent work. And I see you kind of go on location a little bit too. So I'm like, oh, okay. So they
Yeah,
taking the show on the road. Okay.
definitely.
All right. Well, we're going to get into that and much more. But of course, like I open every show, to get it off your chest segment. Now, of course, like I've mentioned previous shows, doing it differently for the month of March. I'm actually talking about Black women in history for this month. Not necessarily a beef I have, but just bringing light to whatever was going on or whatever situation, whatever uh, moment in history was involved. And of course, in this episode, we're going to talk about Ruby Bridges. Now, Ruby was the eldest of five children born to Avon and Lucille Bridges. She was born in Tylerton, Mississippi in 1954, but moved, her and her family relocated to New Orleans, Louisiana when she was 4 in 1958. Now, a couple years later, after she moved, a federal court ordered Louisiana to desegregate schools. Of course, 6 years after the landmark Brown versus Board of Education ruling. Now, Bridges' parents responded to the request from the NAACP and volunteered to participate in the integration of New Orleans school system. Of course, her father was a little hesitant, but her mom was definitely on board with trying to get that done. Now, Ruby had to pass a test that all Black kids had to pass to attend a white school, and her family, had to pass a background test. Of course, they passed. She passed the test. They passed the background test, and she was one of six children to actually pass. Six Black kids to pass the test, actually. So two of them decided to stay at their old school. Three transferred to McDonough and became known as the McDonough Three. As for Ruby, she was the only one, and she was going to William Frantz Elementary School, basically by herself. Of course, at 6, she was 6 years old this time, just to let everyone know. Her mother and her were escorted into William Frantz Elementary School by 4 marshals. She faced racial slurs and screaming crowds and was in the class by herself all year. Yes, she was in the class by herself, one teacher and her, the entire school year. There were boycotts. There was a woman yelling at her, threatening to poison her. Of course, they brought in her own food, brought in food differently for her just because of that threat right there. And there was also another person that held up a Black baby doll in a coffin to her while she was walking into school, which is nuts. Um, of course, yet she continued to go to school, and she would stay there, and she would end up graduating from a desegregated high school and eventually becoming a travel agent. Of course, in 1999, she established the Ruby Bridges Foundation, which specializes in conflict management and diversity education. Ruby Bridges wanted to bring you all that information who are, listening and watching, and, wow, a lot of bravery that she showed to continue to go to school during that time, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because like growing up in New Orleans, I would have to pass that school. My grandmother lived like right down the street from there. My dad lives there now, so like every time I'm visiting, I'm passing that school. So it's kind of hard to like ignore that history. Is it's still right there. And I'm glad that Ruby Bridges herself is still like going around telling her story. And just makes you realize that wasn't that long ago. Like, dealing with the things that we've had to deal with in America, like that's insane.
Very much so, very much so. And I have to give her the utmost respect for being able to, go through all the things that she went through, continue to go to school. I mean, honestly, I probably would have told my parents, no, it's time for me to go home. And honestly, she did have a somebody counseling come to their house like I think once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month, somewhere in that realm. But to actually talk to her, and that counselor actually provided clothes for her to go to school in.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know that either. But yeah, the clothes that she went to school in, the counselor was the one that was providing those clothes for her. So yeah, it was wow, wow,
Yeah.
went through a lot. Of course, it's the South, so a lot of things happen in the South and are still happening in the South. Ooh,
Definitely.
wow. Ruby Bridges, but that's the get it off your chest segment. Of course, special for this month. But of course, we got to get into the show, and we got to get into you since you are from that area. Now, what was it like growing up in the New Orleans area?
Oh my gosh, New Orleans. I feel like there was never a dull moment, a dull day. Growing up, I mean, I feel like my life is like pre Katrina, like before Katrina, after Katrina, pretty much. But before Katrina, like New Orleans was just like so tight knit, unique. I would just every Sunday I'm going by my grandmother's house, spending time with my cousins. Um, it wasn't until I was older to realize like how unique that city is. Mardi Gras, looking forward to king cakes and crawfish season and all this other stuff. And it's like the rest of the country is not really doing that. They're not getting off from a week from school from Mardi Gras and just like everything about our culture from religion to the people. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love my city.
Yeah, definitely New Orleans has a party vibe to it. Just from from afar. I actually was there for a couple events there during my life, but yeah, it just definitely has a different vibe about it. Not necessarily a bad vibe, just a
Yeah.
kind of a festive vibe in terms of Mardi Gras, Essence, all those different things. Which I've been once to Essence Music Festival, and definitely do I have some stories. But yeah, it was definitely fun and definitely vibes down there.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's for food or nothing. I'm sorry.
what's
I mean, as
what's
I
that?
said, the rest of the states could argue, but nobody is seeing us when it comes to food, culture, uniqueness. New Orleans got
Okay, okay. I
that.
can't really argue too much. Hey, the food is very, very nice. I do live here in the hot chicken capital in Nashville, but hey, I got to give it to New Orleans for the food because everyone tries to emulate it, like, and they try to emulate a bunch of different types of food from New Orleans. Whereas in Nashville, they try to emulate the hot chicken, and that's it.
Right.
So, but of course, I got to get into it. And growing up in the New Orleans area, what did you first want to be growing up as a kid?
I don't know. It's funny because I was watching the Candace Buckner interview, and I was like, I wanted to be an archaeologist too. That was like my very first. Like, I was all into like mummies and history, and that was like my first goal when I was a kid, and started getting a little older, and I was like, that's not what I really want to do. I mean, it seemed cool. It seemed cool, but I'm like, is that realistic? But I've always wanted to write. I've always like been in that creative space where I'm just like I'm writing poetry, I'm writing short stories, I'm writing, whatever. And I was from little. I love to read books. I'm named after Maya Angelou, so I feel like it's kind of ironic that I ended up actually becoming a writer and just loving everything about words and storytelling. People, the way they tell their own stories. I just thought that was something so beautiful because not everybody gets to share. And being in this industry, like it's really hard to get people to trust you enough to share their stories. So it's like something that I don't take for granted. But I think this all really started sports journalism. I know I wanted to be a writer, but sports journalism came about. I was probably like 9 or 10 when I was like into Allen Iverson super heavy. I was a Sixers fan because of him. I think it was his uniqueness because he was either very loved or very hated. And he was the first person I really paid attention to where I was just like, why? I want to know why. Like, what was he going through? Where is this, like, confidence and what some would consider arrogance and, all of this coming from? So I started reading a little bit more about his life, and when books about him came out, and it was just like I see him as a human. Like he's not just a basketball player. He's not just this guy talking trash. This guy who carries himself a certain way. Like reading about his life made me realize why he was the way he was and why he carried himself a certain way, why he played so hard, and it made more sense. And it was like I feel like they don't have enough of that. I wanted to humanize athletes. I wanted to be able to tell their stories in a way people haven't heard before. And I feel like maybe when I was like 12 or 13, that's when I realized that I really wanted to do that and get into like features and profiles and long form stories. And I was a casual sports fan. I wasn't ever
Mm-hmm.
really into like beat writing or anything, but I knew I wanted to tell these stories about these athletes because those are sides that we didn't really get to see. And even
Right.
now, like people think athletes are robots and just there for our entertainment. They don't know what they're going through on a daily basis. So I do like when they share their stories with me and I'm able to put that out there. Like, there's more to them than whatever their sport is.
Right, right. It definitely is. Now, you kind of went into your first thoughts or your taste of journalism and kind of what sparked the interest, of course, with Allen Iverson. Yeah, definitely. I think everyone was trying to grow their hair out, get some cornrows, get some tattoos. I mean, yeah, definitely everyone was trying to. Now, have you ever met Allen Iverson? I wanted to ask you that since you brought him up.
Yeah, I did. And it was crazy because I didn't think it was gonna happen. It was when like the Big Three League was getting started, and I was getting emails. It was like their first season, and I'm just like, okay, I know Ice Cube and Allen Iverson have pretty much been the face of this. Yeah, let me see if I can get in. So I emailed like I think the team and I'm like, hey, like, is there any way I can interview Ice Cube and Allen Iverson, get some time? And at first I think they were like, they won't have any spots available. And I was kind of bummed because I was like, it was last minute, but I was just trying to get in there. I wanted to write the story, but I also wanted to meet him a whole lot. Um, and then I think the day before or something like that, they were like, we can give you 10 minutes with him. And I was like, oh my God, now I have to make travel plans and try to figure out how I'm going to get there. I was living in Connecticut at the time, but, they were playing in Philly. And it was like his return to Philly. And I was like, this could be a big story. So I was with ESPN's The Undefeated, which is now Anscape at the time. So ran the idea by them. They loved the idea. I drove down to Philly and got to meet them. And I was truly nervous. Like that was probably the first person where I was just like, oh my gosh, like because the people who know me know like how crazy I was about this man growing up, like VHS tapes of games and interviews and buying everything Reebok put out with his name on it. Like that was me. So I had
Hmm.
everything. And to just be sitting in front of him, it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. And Ice Cube was there too. Like that was crazy. We share the same birthday, so I'm like, oh, like we're Gemini twins.
Hmm.
And just Iverson was super cool. Like the 10 minutes, of course, it wasn't a long time, but I
Hmm.
was able to tell him that I was a fan and I had been waiting for this moment for years, forever. So it was a really cool time. I hope to interview him in the future.
Right, right. I mean, of course, you can only imagine, meeting, people you grew up watching and kind of steered you in the path. Hopefully one day I can meet Jerry Rice, or maybe a Michael Jordan, or someone of that nature, or of course, players I like now in the NBA, like a Jimmy Butler or a Pascal Siakam, which plenty of people will never say they like Jimmy Butler and Pascal Siakam as their favorite players in the NBA, but I'm that guy. But you know, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit more about you growing up in terms of New Orleans. We're going to talk about the college years as well with Xavier University in Louisiana. So, those are not aware, You're going to find out a little bit more on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton, when we come back.
Did you see my picture on the artwork for the show? Well, it was taken by Joshua Silver's photography. Let me tell you, he handled the whole shoot with class and professionalism, and he can do the same for you. Whether it's a model shoot, couples photos, headshots, maternity shoot, senior photos, or more, he has you covered. Just give him a call at 423-557-6746. Again, that's 423-557-6746. Or you can check him out on Instagram at Joshua Silvers Photography to book your shoot. Again, Joshua Silvers Photography, where class and professionalism meets great photos.
All right, and we're back. Now, before we left out, we were talking about, of course, the college years and Xavier University of Louisiana. Now, this is not to be confused with Xavier that's in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is definitely not that university. Can you please kind of I know you probably get it a lot, but let's see. Can you kind of tell everyone about Xavier University of Louisiana, which is where you went to college, by the way? So can you kind of tell everyone about that?
Yeah, I mean, before Hurricane Katrina, I was just trying to be a New Orleans girl through and through. I was going to go to high school. I was going to go to college in Louisiana. I wanted a job at the Times-Picayune. Like, I wanted to just stay in my city. But after Katrina, I ended up coming to Texas, graduating high school from there. But I was like, I still want to go back home. And Xavier University of Louisiana is a place where, so many people in my family graduated from. My sister, she's a speech pathologist. Brother-in-law is a pharmacist. Cousin is a dentist. Like, they just produce so many great Black professional, productive members of society. And I just think that, I can't say enough about that university. But I feel like I was in a unique situation because Xavier is known for the sciences, the pre-med and pre-pharm. They have really great programs, but our communications department was very small. So it was very close-knit. But I felt very welcome. It wasn't going it wasn't like going to a big university where sometimes you're just a face or a number. Nobody really, knows you personally or remembers you. But I can say that we had advisors and professors who actually looked out for us. My advisor pushed me so much. I owe a lot to her. Shout out to Melinda Shelton. She was just one of those people where I was coming from high school where my writing was torn down. And she got to me and she's like, you're a strong writer. We just want to make you better. We want, you need to do X, Y, Z to get to where you actually want to go. And as being in college, I didn't want to hear that I would have to give up my summers. I'm like, I'm already working this hard in school. And now you want me to do summer programs? You want me to do internships? What is this? So none of my summers belong to me. I think the first summer was summer school. Second one, I did an internship at the Times-Picayune, which was New Orleans. I did a summer program. It was at the time called the Multimedia Scholars Program. And that led to an internship at the South Bend Tribune in South Bend, Indiana. And right after I graduated, it was literally the day after I walked. I had great time with my family and I was on a plane to Tennessee. So I did the Chips Quinn Scholars Program and then the Sports Journalism Institute, which is a great program. They're both great programs, but SJI, the people there look out for me like no other. Sandy Rosenbush, Mr. Leon Carter, Greg Lee, they are doing great work and they've been doing that program since 1993, getting women and people of color in newsrooms where we may not have had that chance. So that was a great program that led to an internship at the Detroit News. And so every summer I was grinding. I was not home. I wasn't, partying or anything. There was an internship, and um, I don't think I would have pushed myself in that way if I didn't have the guidance of the people at Xavier, which is a small HBCU, Catholic HBCU, but it's a great university.
Definitely a university I wanted to let you give the university some shine on the show. Of course, we do love HBCU. I didn't go to an HBCU, but we do show love to HBCUs on this show. Of course, I do cover Tennessee State University in basketball and football, so definitely got to show the HBCU some love. But of course, going to Xavier. Now you mentioned you were in school and you were doing interns at the same time. Now, how was that? Kind of balancing class, school, interns, having somewhat of a life. How was it balancing all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the internships that I had to do, it was more like, okay, school is school. You get through school, and then during the summer, I made some really good friends during those internships and during those summer programs. So it's like it was okay because you had people who were kind of like in the same space and going through the same things with you. People that you didn't know, but you shared the same interests or hobbies or whatever. And that's kind of where the fun came from, because we did bond in a way where we would go out together or hang out together. So it wasn't completely lonely. It was just different.
Mm-hmm.
It was good experiences, because I was like, I probably would never go to South Bend, just to be there. Maybe go to Notre Dame because like that's what they're known for. But I mean, I met some incredible people there while I was there, and I was able to say that I was getting the experience. I was getting clips. I was at some of these internships, like taking photos and editing videos and doing like my own packages. And that kind of showed me that, like, especially during that time, you needed to prove that you can do everything, and be like an asset to these teams, because it was rough. I mean, the industry is still rough and it's ever evolving, and I'm still learning and growing with it. So, but that was my first taste when I was like, early 20s, just getting out there, doing things on my own. It proved that, I can do this and I'm able to do this. And I think having those clips and that experience really helped me with ESPN.
Awesome. Now, of course, for those that aren't aware, you went to, of course, the Detroit News. You did an intern there, and then from there it was ESPN, where you have been for over a decade now.
Yeah, that's
So,
crazy.
I wanna ask, because I kind of did a little bit of looking into everything. Now, you were, of course, an editor, and then you went to writing sports. I'm sorry, you did a few different things there, and then you went to writing. So you kind of went the opposite way of what some people go. So what kind of caused you to go the opposite way, as opposed to going like writing and then moving to the editor and the researcher? You kind of went the opposite way. So I wanted to kind
Yeah.
of hear that story.
Yeah, so I started as a researcher, and it was funny because that wasn't on my mind at all. I was, my Detroit news internship, that was going to be the last one. It's like, I've graduated. Now what? Like, where do I go? Like, stuff is getting real at this point. And I didn't have very many job offers. And the ones that I did have, I was like, oh, I don't know about this. So I actually attended my first NABJ conference. It was in New Orleans that year, 2012. So I had to fly from Detroit to go back home to attend this conference. I was like, that's crazy. But I went, and, ESPN always has a booth there. And like I said, at this time, I was just like kind of starstruck, because I'm like looking at some of the people at the booth who I see on TV and who I've always wanted to meet. And it's like, oh my God, like they're actually there and they're talking to people. But I feel like at that conference or convention, everyone kind of wants to be on TV. You get very few people who want to write, but you have a lot of people with goals of like being on TV, or they want to be on the production side of things and not like the digital media. But at the time, ESPN, the magazine, had a table. I was able to talk to the executive editor, and I was just like, I'm interested in magazine writing. I want to write like longer features and everything. And he took my resume. And at the time, like other recruiters were like, just email us and we'll get back to you. And I was like, everyone is trying to work at ESPN. They're not going to call me back. But this editor took my information and took my samples. And so I got back to Detroit, and I had met one of the magazine's editors at the time named Keith Reed. And I emailed him because I knew that he had been writing for newspapers, but he was also transitioning to like writing for magazines, editing magazine articles. And I was like, what's the difference between writing? I just sent him an email, and it was just like a simple question. I just wanted to get more information about that. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to answer your question, but we actually have a position open for a part-time researcher, and it might be something that you're interested in, so you should apply. And so I was just like, I knew I wanted to write for ESPN. That was always a goal. And I was like, man, this might be a foot in the door, but this is also like super scary because it's ESPN. But then it was kind of like one of those things. So like, what's the worst that can happen? So I applied, didn't hear anything back for a while. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess this is what rejection feels like. But a few days later, they were just, I guess they were getting things together because they wanted to fly me out to interview. And I was like, oh, like this is happening. I'd never been to Connecticut before. Went there and interviewed, and saw the executive editor. He remembered me, and he enjoyed my clips and our conversation. And I was like, things like that matter. And ABJ is important because of connections like that. So I got there, and it was just like, I started off as a part-time researcher. So that includes like fact checking the work of the writers, making sure there aren't any errors, making sure everything is accurate. And it was something that I was enjoying because I felt like it unlocked new things for my own writing whenever I got there. Like I wanted to be a writer, but as I was able to kind of go through the thought process, I was kind of able to look at the editing process and different things like that. So I think every writer should probably start off as a researcher. That was like a really good thing for me. So I did that, and Raina Kelly, who is now the editor-in-chief of Anscape at ESPN, she was a senior editor at the magazine at the time. And once I found out that, Anscape, it used to be The Undefeated, when I found out that was going to be a site, I was like, okay, now's my chance. Like, I get to write. I want to write full time. And to be fair, at the magazine, they did let me do some writing. They knew I wanted to write, but it was kind of like on my own time. Once I'm finished with researching and fact checking what I needed, then I can go out and do whatever I wanted to do. And I appreciated that they let me do that, because I know not everyone gets that opportunity. So I did write a little bit, like some blurbs for the magazine. I had a few articles with ESPNW at the time. So I was building as I was a researcher. When Anscape came along, it was an associate editor title, but I wrote. I still did a lot of writing. It was across the board because Anscape is more than just sports. We have entertainment, culture, HBCU vertical, and I did it all. I was doing a little bit of everything: sports, news, entertainment. So that happened, and I think I wanted just a little bit more for my career. It's like, okay, I want to concentrate more on features and profiles because that's always been my interest. And I ended up doing a fellowship with the investigative unit because that was something that piqued my interest. And when the investigative and enterprise units merged at ESPN, I was able to, have the best of both worlds with those. It's like I can, still hone my investigative skills, but also write, about features and profiles. So I was like, okay, like that's where I am now. That's exactly where I wanted to be. It took me a little while to get there, 10 years, but I am very, very happy with where I am now.
That's awesome. I mean, of course, during that time, of course, I know you learned some lessons and some things that you may want to, or advice you want to pass on to some that may be coming behind you. So, the floor is yours. Do you have any advice for any of those that are coming behind you, and whether it be the journalism, broadcast field, or, more specifically, Black women and Black people that may be coming behind you?
Yeah, I just don't be shy. Like I feel like I wasted so much time like not wanting to bother people. Or you look at it, you look at writers and celebrities and athletes and whoever as like, idols. And it's like if you have that opportunity, you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to like reach out too much because they're busy. I don't want to bother them. And it's like, no, like if they give you their information, like take that and bother them. Like I'm just learning that lesson. And one thing that really stuck out is like when Jamel Hill was at ESPN, I had a friend that I had made. This was like 2012. I hadn't even been hired. I didn't apply or anything. But I was like, man, like you work around all these people that I just want to be around. Like, do you think I could, do you know Jamel's like information or something? Like, I just want to ask her questions. Because that was like, that's who I wanted to be when I was like, really getting into this. I was like, I want to have the sports knowledge of Jamel, but I also want to be a writer like Wright Thompson. And, those were like the two that I really wanted to have a career like. So he gave me Jamel's email after asking her, and I was just like, she probably won't respond, but I mean, I have nothing to lose at this point. So I just asked her, basic advice being a Black woman in sports, working at ESPN, just general questions. And it was like less than 24 hours, and she wrote this like long email. I still have it. And it was just like stuff like that really matters. Like stuff like that really sticks with you because it's just like, I know she was busy. She was on TV, she was writing, she was doing like everything at the time, but she still took time to like email me. And she didn't know me, and I didn't know I was going to be working at ESPN. I think I sent that email in like March or April of 2012, and then I was hired by ESPN in September. So it was just like way before, I knew that life was going to go that way. But still, like I'll never forget that. And that's the type of stuff like that's the person I want to be to people, and that's the person
Mm-hmm.
like the type of person that I think everyone should be, quite frankly. It's just like it takes nothing to offer that advice and like be a mentor or just you never know whose life you're going to change with stuff like that. And Wright is the same way. But I had been knowing Wright Thompson for years and didn't like reach out. It was just like, oh my gosh, like Wright's so cool. Like he's nice. He's this great writer. But it wasn't until this year where I'll text and be like, hey, can I send you this pitch? Hey, can I like show you this story? What do you think about this? What's your writing process? And really having mentors, just like it's really important. So if I had to tell someone something, it's like, don't be shy, reach out to these people, and you just never know what those connections are going to do for your own career.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. You definitely can't be shy. And another thing, I tell anybody that asks me anything, do not be afraid of the word no. You're going to get that word no, but there's always going to be a yes that comes around.
Exactly.
So I definitely say that one. But of course, you've answered pretty much all the questions that I have, but we're not done just yet. We do have a game. We got 5 questions, 2 answers, 1 choice. We're going to do a little bit of New Orleans flavor to this one. Are you ready?
I think so. That one choice is getting to me though. I'm like, if it's hard, I'm not gonna want to choose.
All right, we're gonna start off. We're gonna start off with a bang right out of the chute. Cash Money or No Limit Records?
See, you know what? Before you even asked that question, I knew that was gonna be a question. I knew it. I feel like I would have to go with Cash Money because it was like when I was growing up, that was like the like you can't dispute their music. I mean, I love No Limit, but just for me personally, Cash Money was just like that anthem of like the young people. You had Wayne, you had just all these talents, and it's like, oh, that breaks my heart to have to choose though, because I love them both.
uh Well, okay, we're going to talk a little bit of New Orleans Saints football. Alvin Kamara or Deuce McAllister?
Oh my gosh.
You got to pick one back to take to win a game for you.
Ah, Deuce was such a freaking powerhouse, but I don't know. It was like different eras of greatness. So it's just like I'm trying to think. I mean, I love Alvin.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's lighter, he's faster. But Deuce was just like he would run through people. It's like it didn't matter. He was just like he was great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was such a great. That's hard. That's hard.
Yeah,
I
definitely
like.
one to think
I
about.
want to say Kamara, but it's just like I can't forget what he did. But Kamara is like doing it now, and it's just like
Mm-hmm.
love him, Kamara.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Mardi Gras or Essence? Which one, if you had to choose one event to go to?
Oh my gosh. Essence is Black excellence. I mean, so you know what? Like Mardi Gras would probably be my favorite because I was scarred for personal reasons with Essence because my family owns like a catering business and we always cater at Jazz Fest. We have the chicken and jambalaya at Jazz Fest, which a lot of Saints players, a lot of celebrities will come to our booth to get my dad's chicken, his jambalaya. Like Craig Robinson is like one of our family friends basically now because of my dad's chicken. But Essence, we would do the same thing. So it's like I've never been to an Essence as a party goer or as an attendee. I always worked Essence with my family. It was cool to meet a lot of people though. It was cool to meet some of the celebrities and stuff, but I was tired all the time. But Mardi Gras is just such a unique experience. It's like Christmas Day for people from New Orleans. You waking up and to go see the Zulu parade, waking up super early to go get a good spot. When I was a kid, I rode in Zulu, so that was an experience in itself. Throwing beads, opposed to being the one catching them, that was really cool. So I do love Mardi Gras.
Okay. All right. Now this one's a little bit more of for what you do now is road assignments or Zoom calls or phone calls. Which one do you like more?
Which was? Can you ask the question again?
Road assignments or Zoom calls or phone calls? Which one do you
Oh.
like more?
Probably road assignments because you get to interact with people, you get to kind of set those scenes in your stories, and really pull people into where you are. Zoom calls, it just feels so impersonal. I know like you have to settle for those a lot, but it's just like I love like if I'm gonna do a story, I love being around that person, seeing how they are, and actually forming that connection versus phone calls or Zoom calls, especially if you're talking about stuff that they don't want to talk about. It could be like, oh, like my connection, my signal went out, and they never call you back again. So it's just like, oh no, like when I'm in person, you have to talk to me. But it's just
Okay.
good to make the story come alive too.
Okay. All right. And last one. A beignet or po' boy? Which one if you gotta choose one?
Fair. That is not fair. But po' boy is all the way. Like there's nothing like a hot sausage po' boy dressed. No tomatoes for me. I don't like tomatoes, but that's something that's so like uniquely New Orleans where people know exactly what you're talking about. Po' boys
Hmm.
and big shot cold drinks. So I love it.
Okay. All right. All right. That is all the questions I have. 5 questions, 2 answers, and one choice. And we have reached the end of the show. I want to thank you, Miss Maya Jones, for coming on the show. Thank you for kind of giving us a rundown of your life growing up in New Orleans and to where you are now. I want to give you the floor to kind of talk about all the things you're working on, where people can find you on social media.
I first of all want to thank everyone for watching and being interested in my life. I don't do many like I hate public speaking. I don't do many podcast appearances. I'm getting out of my comfort zone though. You can find me at MJAY615 on Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, look out for my work. Maya A. Jones is my byline. I think my most recent interview was Quinta Brunson. It was really fun. Sorry that her Eagles lost, but yeah, I have some great stuff coming soon, but it will be out, and I will be posting links everywhere. So just look out for that.
Now, funny, you know, I heard your Twitter handle and it said 615. I was like, hold up, that's Nashville. You know, my mind went straight to Nashville.
I was like, I usually do 504 or my birthday. So my birthday is June 15th. So
okay,
that's usually what it is.
Got you. Yeah, threw me off for a minute. I was about to say, hold up now. But yeah, definitely. And then of course, you did talk about, you know, doing all the short stories and things like that growing up. And funny thing is, I actually still do some of those things now, like short stories, poetry, all those different things now. Of course, I don't do it under this name you see on the screen or the name Mike Patton. I do it under a different name, and those that know. But yeah, definitely still have fun doing those things. Of course, I'm wearing a shirt that says Black Creative, so definitely that is me all day, every day. But of course, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you all for watching on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.